There's a phenomenon in American culture which is becoming increasingly apparent, which I can best describe, I suppose, as the rise of the ethnic striver. If you've been following me at all on Twitter, you know that I've been talking about this for some time, especially as it becomes increasingly apparent, becomes increasingly proliferated throughout social media. And in America, we had a good 3 centuries of rule by WASPs, right? You had your white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. These guys were more or less the elites keeping the trains running on time. In the last 60 years or so, we've run an experiment where we try to have an elite class that is increasingly dominated by Jews, by Catholics. And now you are seeing a sort of usurpation where a lot of Asians, South Asians, East Asians are coming to dominate, or at least try their very best to infiltrate that kind of ruling class. Thus, we have the rise of the ethnic striver. These are people who tend to view work, credentials, social life, posturing in terms that are very un-American, and it really has grinded my gears. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, how it's all pretty much fake and performative, and how I am annoyed and I am almost amused by their attempts to infiltrate the upper echelons of American society and sort of pantomime things that Americans have always done, have always strived towards. And they do this all as some just elaborate social media ritual and posture and LARP, essentially because they want access to the American dream, which is to say money, which is to say white women. And white women are not exactly in alignment with that goal from our South Asian patriots and our East Asian patriots. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And speaking of talking about, the effects of a social fabric, when you have increased immigration. We saw a story in Australia where this guy was swimming to save the life of his family, and he encountered foreigners who literally could not understand him, could not help him. And then also, I have to tell you about voter ID and why that's extremely important, because foreigners are coming into the country and voting in our elections, and that is very bad for the Patriot cause. So all of that, and probably even more. Do stay tuned. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the John Doyle Show. We must first discuss our Patriot from down below, or down under, I guess they say. Still a Patriot, Austin Appelbee. Literally the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. The greatest name in the history of lineage or spoken word. This Austin Appelbee Patriot, 13 years old. He swims out, or he's swept out to sea with his family, and I guess he swims back 4 hours and 4 kilometers, if you can do the math at a speed of 1 kilometer per hour, given the waves, the treachery of the sea. And so he goes and he gets help for his family all as well, and he's interviewed by local news, and he gives a pretty touching recount of, his faith, his motivation, his determination, his general willpower to make that swim to save his family. And I recommend you go watch the full video because it's a great story, a very typical sort of adventurous, well-meaning young patriot. And he discusses, however, what he saw upon arriving to shore, which I think should be paid attention to by the John Doyle program. So yeah, take a look at this.
And then finally I just made it to shore, and I hit the bottom of the beach and I just collapsed. And then after that I had to sprint 2 kilometers to go get to the phone. And then when I got to the phone, there was a lot of foreign people on the beach, so I couldn't really get much help. And so I ran to the phone and I called 000, and I had to call 000 police. I said I need helicopters, I need planes, I need boats. My family's out at sea.
Interesting. So you, 13 years old, you're a patriot, you're exhausted, you just swam 4 kilometers. Your family's still out there, you need help, and you're trying to communicate this to foreigners, and they just literally don't understand what you're saying. Very interesting. And honestly, it's not just the language barrier, and maybe it was. I mean, I don't think he even specified that they couldn't understand what he was saying because of the language. The way I read that, or heard that, I guess, is more typical of what you see in foreign cultures that are outside of the Anglosphere, which is that they just simply do not have a regard for human life. You see these videos. If you've ever spent an afternoon, a rainy afternoon on Live Leak, watching these kinds of videos, which I don't recommend you seek out that material. I'm just saying, if you went to high school, you probably had that one guy It's 7:30 a.m. AP Physics. He's like, dude, have you ever? And he's like showing you these videos. One thing you notice about those videos and Instagram Reels too, I guess, like it's just like, you're just scrolling, trying to fall asleep, and all of a sudden you see something that's going to keep you awake for the next like 90 minutes, just like torturing you. But basically, you watch these videos where whether it's India, any third world country where there's like these sort of like mass favela like gatherings of people, just like totally just packed in there like sardines. Wet markets, open air markets, mopeds going around. You understand the picture I'm painting. Sometimes things happen where, like, I don't know, a scaffolding collapses or some horrible accident occurs and someone will just like drop dead immediately. Or like sometimes they'll like fall off a building and someone just like dies. And what you notice is most people like literally just keep walking. Like they literally just go about their day. You see this with like trains or buses when like these Indian people will get like run over by them and people just like continue and they board the train and they just go about their day. Like it does not seem to like register in their mind that like the loss of human life is something tragic and it should have attention immediately paid to it. Which again, I'm not saying that these people were like, foreigners on the beach and they've got binoculars. They're watching this like Australian family in jeopardy and they're just saying like, haha, we don't care. I'm just saying, I think that as Anglos, we tend to think that quite selfishly, right? Quite, what do they call it? Ethno-narcissistically. We think that our experience in the world and how we relate to other beings, be those human beings or even other creatures, we assume that is like the default state of humanity and that everybody else is also viewing things that way, which is why we will go out of our way to like rescue a bunny, nurture it back to health. Deer. I mean, you see this all the time. They literally make fun of it on social media. Like, white people will, go out of their way for XYZ animal, but then they'll like lock their doors around like minorities or something. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to maybe elaborate on that at this time, but it is to say that like, obviously Europeans, white people have a special relationship with animals, domesticating animals, looking after animals. And we also tend to extend a kind of charity to other people. Like that, it really is something that is central to our culture, quite uniquely, by the way. Other cultures do not exactly have that sense of charity, especially to outgroup. They may have that to, immediate kin, but to other people, let alone to other, I guess, countries, like, no, absolutely not. So yeah, that is, I guess, a consequence perhaps unanticipated of importing the third world. You could create a scenario where there's some disaster, you're swept out to sea, you need help, you need to get a hold of somebody, and nobody is there to help you, either because they literally do not understand what you're saying, or if they do speak the language, they don't understand the urgency of the situation, and maybe even if they do, they don't really care. They do not view you as part of their kin, even if they now have a passport that looks identical to your passport. They now reside in the same, I don't know if they have zip codes in Australia, but the same geography. That doesn't do it. That's not enough. That does not bring people together. That does not actually make people feel as though they have a sense of sort of community and obligation towards other people. Whereas when you have a homogenous society, you actually don't even have to think about it. You just immediately spring into action because you understand this is your community, these are your people, and you have to look out for each other. And you know that that's reciprocated because that's what you've experienced for your whole life, whatever the scale may be, whether it's returning the shopping cart or people coming to aid when you're in a state of crisis. So yeah, not good, and we can't have any more of that. So good job, Patriot Appelbee. Unbelievable. Honorary American. Austin Appelbee, Patriot. So we are about to get into, speaking of, the consequences of immigration and sort of like clashes of civilizations, if you will. That is why it is so important that you go right now, and by right now, I mean after we talk about the ethnic strivers, to blazetv.com/Doyle. You get $20 off right now. That is as low as $8 a month. When you join the annual plan, you can be a part of a movement that is not just watching history, but actually shaping it for the next generation, which is extremely important. BRB. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back on the program. And again, I've been talking about this for a while. A lot of people have been kind of describing this phenomenon in a while. I did not coin the term ethnic striver. That was coined by somebody on Twitter, and I saw that, and I immediately loved it because I understood that is the encapsulation of like what we're all kind of witnessing, and that's the best way to describe it. But I encountered this tweet on Friday, which genuinely, I'm not one of these guys that like gets mad at my phone, but I saw this, and for reasons that I will explain momentarily, it hit pretty close to home. But basically, there was a video that was going around, and I guess it was maybe posted on TikTok or Instagram or something, and it was this video of a dinner party on a Friday night, and you've got these kind of like mystery meat Americans, we'll say. Some appear to have maybe some South Asian ethnicity, some appear to be Jewish, But the caption is from this guy, Anthony Bradley. He says, Cornell men get it. Dinner parties are far better than binge drinking at bars with music so loud you can't talk. This was 1950s, early 60s young adult culture. Dinner parties are greater than bars. Who's cooking? How are the guys dressed? Do SEC, ACC, Big Ten state school guys do this too? So I could already kind of tell like what this was about. He's basically taking this sort of like mystery meat Americans who are they're LARPing as WASP socialites. That is what is happening right here. This is not, oh, we're all going to come over and we're going to cook steak and we're going to film it and we're going to have champagne because, as you may know, steak and champagne famously go together, which we know because we're doing this like gay socialite LARP for social media, pretending that we're like upper class Americans. And we go to Cornell, which Cornell, dude, it's literally like the easiest Ivy League school to get into, which I get it, dude. It's still an Ivy League. That's really cool. I'm just saying the type of person that advertises that they went to Cornell is so like widely acknowledged to be like an insufferable kind of like LARP that they dedicated a character to it on The Office. Like that was, what was his face? His whole thing. Like, I went to Cornell. It's like, okay, dude, you know. Time Magazine, by the way, Time Magazine just came out with their ranking of like American universities, and the university, which was mentioned momentarily, ranked far higher than Cornell University. So anyway, let me just continue. So this is obviously meant to allude to this kind of like, you know, oh, the reason normal Americans aren't succeeding at, you know, SEC schools, Big Ten schools, that's like your normal, just like white American kid. Maybe he's like a frat guy, whatever. He wants to go to a school where he likes the football team. He wants to party a little bit, get a college education. This is the American way. This has been happening forever. I think Buzz Aldrin, or maybe it was Neil Armstrong, one of those guys, I think it was Neil Armstrong, got into MIT and refused to go there and instead pursued an education at the less academically inclined Purdue simply because he liked the football team. As an astronaut, literally the best of the best. We'll talk about astronauts probably at another point, but I mean, to be an astronaut, you literally have to be the absolute best of the best of the best, smartest person literally to ever exist to deal with that kind of technology, pressure, whatever. So that's like American excellence, opting out of going to MIT simply for credentials and status, going to Purdue because I like the football team and I'll probably go there, get a good education, and still stumble my way into success, as is the American way, because we are simply just like exceptional, right? That's what we're supposed to believe. So anyway, this guy gets a reply, and this guy says, no, because SEC, ACC, and Big Ten are too busy driving the economy to do these kind of like social media LARP rituals where we're going to pretend that we're WASP socialites in the 1950s. He replies to this by saying, sure thing, pal. And he links an article that was just written the other day because about a week or so ago, there was a student, a 19-year-old white guy at the University of Michigan who went missing. And there was a big thing about it. There was essentially a manhunt. I mean, it was a missing persons report. Everyone was looking for this guy. They end up finding his body not too long after. And essentially, this guy was at a party, I think on Friday night. He was walking home drunk. And in Michigan right now, it's like freezing cold. And so he ended up, I guess, passing out outside. And he froze to death because it was like, you know, negative 10 degrees outside. So this kid ended up dying at 19 years old because he was just going out, drinking too much, walking home by himself. It's a tragedy, but, you know, that's what people tend to do at college. I'm not saying that you should go out binge drinking and try to walk home. I'm just saying, like, this is what happened. But to invoke that as sort of a counter to this idea that, like, actually, no, Big Ten, ACC, SEC schools, they're doing just fine. They don't need to go out and do this, like, LARP bit about how they're the new American upper class. They seem to be doing all right for themselves. And then to be the ethnic striver replying to that, be like, huh, sure thing, buddy. This guy just died. This kid just died at this one school, which was ranked higher than Cornell. Shaping the economy. You died, by the way. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I literally could not even conceive of that kind of reply. So then, in trying to find these tweets again to send them to producer Blake, I scroll this guy's timeline, and in searching, you know, a few days back to find it, I find another one that just proves the point. He tweets a video of a guy, like some normal looking, like, white guy at Ole Miss, and it's a video of him. I guess he's like shotgunning a beer or something at a tailgate, or he's got a boys throwing back a couple twees, you know, as one does. And he's like, this is the culture at Ole Miss. This student regularly posts videos like this, and for some reason, no one told him that this is a bad idea, and one day he's going to need a job. I'm not sure Gen Z realizes that employers check their social media accounts. Give me a fucking break, dude. Women can go and post pictures of God knows what. They can get tattoos, run OnlyFans, do literally anything, and women can still very easily get jobs. Obviously, minorities can still easily get jobs, regardless of their public behavior. But you see a video of like a white guy at a tailgate doing things that people do at tailgates, and all of a sudden, This is why they're not getting jobs. You should probably keep things a little bit more close to the chest there. It's so obvious what this vector of attack is doing. It is trying to justify why white guys are not performing as well when you look at the data, which we all know is because they're literally gatekept from doing so. There are legal impediments that have been put in place to prevent those outcomes from being reflected in the data. But then you've got this guy who wants to come out and be like, no, it's because he's drinking beer at a tailgate instead of pretending that he's a socialite from the 1950s and doing X, Y, Z. So you are seeing this everywhere. If you've been involved in higher education, you understand what I'm talking about. Like, imagine a suburban high school in New Jersey, in California. The valedictorian is always Asian, right? The math team is going to be 90% Indian, Chinese. The orchestra is going to be stacked with Koreans. Parents are going to be bragging about perfect SAT scores, Ivy League acceptances. Meanwhile, like, white families are just kind of literally quietly just pulling their kids out and moving to less, we'll say, competitive districts. That's a nice way to put it. But Helen Andrews just had a tweet thread about this that I thought was great. She's a great author, very smart. And she said, white parents flee these schools because it's not what they want for their kids. That's an observation, not a value judgment. I think we should try to understand why. And so this is like the ethnic striver phenomenon that I'm talking about. Like, Asian and Indian immigrants are going to come over here and they try to dominate elite academics, but there is a cost to that, which is they take like memorization, ritual, all of that over creativity. Like, they lock themselves down and do like endless test prep, trying to make themselves as credentialized as possible over actually the genuine pursuit of personal improvement, education, things like that. They call them tiger mothers, like Amy Chua. She openly boasts about this online, trying to make like white parents feel bad for trying to allow their kids to have the same upbringing that they did. And they were able to be successful because you didn't have to compete with, like, I don't know, all of these third world immigrants, H-1Bs, student visas, all of this other stuff. They were able to more or less exist, have a normal American upbringing, expect the same for their children. Now they are being made to feel ashamed of that by these people who just showed up in America 5 seconds ago and want to come over here and say, sleepovers, play dates, A-minuses? That's called being a failure. This is the American dream. I know that to you you really don't understand what that means. Maybe it's like a language barrier or a cultural barrier. I don't know. Whatever you are describing is something else entirely. It's like a cultural import that hollows out what makes America great and then tries to just get in there and wear it like a skin suit. Be like, it's the American dream. It's like, dude, give me a break. It's fraudulent. It's not even real. It's not like you're coming in and doing it better. You are chasing status, and you will do literally anything to get that, whether it's cheating mafias, fraud, the like performative hustle stuff you see all over LinkedIn, all over Twitter. Every 5 seconds, I have to see a tweet from some like Asian person in San Francisco where they're like, can you believe it that I brought my laptop to the restaurant because I have to code, and I'm always coding and I'm always working? Where's the product? What do you do? Show me the product. Show me the company. I should know about it already, but I don't. All I see from you, your only output, is really letting me know, assuring me that you're working really hard, you're really smart, you're really credentialed. Look at all these words that imply that I'm smart. Show me what the actual output is. Show me the output that would imply those credentials exist. I don't give a fuck about your credentials. Show me what you actually do, other than just try to like justify the displacement of normal Americans by waving, oh, look at my degree. Look at my credentials. You don't do anything. What do you do? Why do we need you? I'm so tired of having to hear, we dominate the Ivy Leagues. We dominate Silicon Valley. Where are the products? Where are the innovators? This is not what the system is meant to select for. It rewards this performative grinding, this cheating. Doesn't reward actual like merit, risk taking. It rewards people for pretending that they can fill the shoes of normal Americans, and it punishes normal Americans and just boots them out of the picture because obviously that's the whole point. So this is like the dark side of ethnic striving. It's the cheating scandals, it's the credential fakery, the essay writing, like firms, the parents turning kids into like just machines. And this is profoundly un-American, obviously. And I think this does just kind of dispel the whole like model minority myth. And yeah, like I don't know, man, I'm kind of tired of hearing that. Maybe it just deserves to die. So a few days ago, Helen Andrews posted a viral thread on Twitter that cut through years of this kind of like polite silence. And she observed that once the Asian population at suburban public high schools exceeds roughly 30 to 40%, white parents begin quietly pulling their kids out and moving to less, we'll say, competitive districts, which is, again, to say less fraudulent districts where this kind of like lying and striving and just like this just LARP, this disgusting gay LARP is not occurring so her kids can just, like, I don't know, maybe breathe a little bit and enjoy a normal American high school experience without being shamed for that. Because people are like, look at me, I'm working harder. And then they're just like lying. They're hiring people to write their essays for them, cheating on other. It's just like, it's a disgusting mess. But anyway, so these schools, they stop being places for well-rounded teenagers, and instead they turn into these like brutal like resume factories, basically focused almost entirely on grades, AP classes, test scores. And then Wilfred Riley added some hard data to this. He said Asian students on average get around like a 1250 on the SAT, while white students on average get about 1100. So that gap is even larger too on the math section. Eric Kaufman has documented the next stage. He said the quiet transition from Jewish to Asian dominance at elite universities and professional pipelines. Obviously, we mentioned that in the intro, but this phenomenon generally is, again, what we are calling the ethnic striving phenomenon. Ethnic strivers, they are primarily, East Asian, be those Chinamen, Koreans, people from Taiwan. You got the South Asians, of course, Indians, especially like the upper caste Indians. These people are immigrating to America, and they're teaching their children to treat academic achievement as like this all-consuming zero-sum competition. And their goal is not personal growth or even genuine intellectual curiosity. Their goal is to obtain status through credentials which they associate with the elite class. This reminds me, I had a conversation. I was at lunch with two people who you probably know, good patriots, and my one buddy was making fun of my other buddy for getting his college degree in something that wasn't exactly, monetizable. It was some very like sort of niche, esoteric history discipline. And they were just kind of, trading blows, and I was just eating my food. And he had a reply that stuck with me to this day because, my one buddy said something like, oh, and then he said, yeah, it's called an education. And I was like, dude, honestly, like so true. You used to be able to just go and get a college degree and go pursue an education without having to worry about how are you going to monetize it because the job market was not so competitive. College was intended for people who were genuinely intelligent and wanted to nurture and cultivate virtues, academic discipline, because they had an intellectual curiosity about the world. It wasn't just like, oh, I guess I just have to do this and I enjoyed taking chemistry in high school, so I'm going to go get a degree in chemistry. Like, this is completely not the purpose of the university, which are basically just like daycares. It's this, people just want to go to university and just like drink a bunch of alcohol and have sex. It's like that is a 4-year commitment where they're like, I don't quite want to grow up yet, so I will do this thing that is like vaguely orienting me towards like a better path, something like that. It's not the same thing as a true, maybe classically liberal university education. And I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm not saying that, right after you get out of high school, 18 years old, you need to be on the line. You need to be working. You need to be a plumber. You need to do whatever. I'm just saying it used to be easier, and it is the birthright of American students to be able to just kind of naturally sprout and flourish without having to worry about these like vultures circling them, just waiting for any opportunity to cheat their way into opportunities which were created specifically for American students. So you see it in the rest of the world. I mean, these kids, they're 4 and 5 years old, and they're being forced into playing piano, and they're taking Kumon lessons, and the summers are spent at academic camps. Not camps where maybe you, I don't know, make friends, learn to sail, stuff like that. If they play sports, it's only if it's to pad, the college applications, like, tennis, golf, swimming, stuff like that tends to be preferred. Social life is completely sacrificed. Like, they don't really date. They don't go to parties. Sleepovers, they famously get real mad about that, the Indians. On Twitter, they're discouraged, maybe banned. Any grade that you get like below an A is treated as like a total failure, and shame is weaponized as like motivation for this. And so the results can be, good test scores, admissions to Ivies, top UC schools, whatever, but often at the cost of like anything genuine, creativity, social skills, mental health, actual leadership. Again, it's not enforcing those high standards because it wants to cultivate the virtues which would reach those high standards. It is enforcing them for the standards themselves because they believe that's going to be access to like, a higher caste, higher class, the elite standing in American life. And so this is not exactly the classic American path of like well-rounded excellence. No, this is like a high pressure, like immigrant specific grind culture, which is foreign, literally imported from East and South Asia. And now that is like seeking to reshape elite institutions in America. And it is completely foreign. The heart of the ethnic striver phenomenon lies in a fundamental clash of civilizations. It's between the Asian and the Western approaches to education, and like high achieving Asian immigrant communities, particularly from China, Korea, India, like academic success is just laser focused on learning, high stakes testing, relentless preparation for standardized exams like the SAT, AP test, what have you. And parents and students prioritize long study hours, 10 hours a day after school. Then you get private tutoring, you cram schools, all that stuff. And that's like the model. And that is emphasizing, again, not the cultivation of legitimate intellectual curiosity or virtue, but memorization, repetition, and a mastery of quantifiable skills. And so it views education as literally just this zero-sum competition where the goal is to outscore peers for elite college spots, essentially. Natasha Werrick had some pretty good ethnography on this in Race at the Top. It was a book she wrote. It documents this sort of like culture in affluent suburban schools where Asian students are spending far more time on homework, test prep, often at the expense of sleep, hobbies, social interactions, what have you. And the result is, good performance in math, good performance in science, but it comes from a cultural script which has been imported from East Asia, where systems like China's Gaokao, India's IIT exams, like that is what determines life outcomes based on like a single test score. It is very, I want to say this in a nice, considerate way. It is very incubating. It is sort of, how you might say, primitive. Ant. That's the word I want to use. It reminds me of an ant colony rather than something that is fostering like legitimate individual excellence. And again, on those tests themselves, they quite often are dishonest and forge and cheat. And even American students who aren't spending so much time doing all these other things still tend to do pretty well. If you look at, again, the PISA scores, white American students still among the best in the world. Asian students living in America, I think, tend to outperform white students. But again, you're talking about a billion Asians. You skim the top 1% of those, top 0.1% of those, the highest performing. It's simply a numbers game at that point. Like, on average, white American students are not going to do as well as the literal best of the best of the best of the best of the Asian continent, who then come into white countries and compete against white students. Like, okay, you got us because it's a numbers game. But if you're talking about just like normal American students versus normal East Asian students, I stand to wager that Americans are once again going to take the dub there. But so in contrast, the traditional Western and particularly American ideal of education stresses exactly that virtue cultivation, right? You're balancing, holistic development with legitimate academic pursuits. And U.S. colleges are explicitly oriented towards this, valuing well-rounded applicants who excel not just in grades, but in leadership, creativity, athletics, community service, essays that reveal you've got some depth. You're not just an NPC, it's not just a transcript. You're a striver. You're taking good tests. You can actually say something about the world, which is why they all hire people to write essays for them. Chinese people love to say that. They love to say that, we actually had the written word longer than the Europeans did. We were writing. Is it an Odyssey? Is it an Iliad? No, it's like grain inventory. That's what they're talking about when they talk about, we were writing before the Europeans, and it's literally tallies of grain inventory. Where is your Odyssey? Where is your Iliad? Anyway, it all stems from a philosophy that, again, education should foster independent thinkers, innovators, and citizens that are equipped for a dynamic, rapidly changing society. That is the classic idea of American education, maybe Western education generally. I mean, think of the classic American high school experience, right? Football games, debate clubs, summer jobs, electives, you do a little theater kid LARP, whatever. This is a well-rounded American experience. And Pew actually has data that highlights this kind of cultural gap still, where white students are more likely to participate in extracurriculars that build soft skills, while Asian students focus narrowly on academics to maximize literally just odds of getting accepted into a good college. So the rounded approach produced figures like Bill Gates. Well, maybe he's not exactly a good example right now. I don't know. One of these good, one of those guys, maybe not Bill Gates, but you get the idea. People who do well in environments that require creativity and innovation rather than just conformity and LARPing, right? So the consequences of this mismatch, I think, are pretty stark. Helen Andrews, again, in her thread, she points to white flight from Asian-dominated schools, specifically because the environment becomes joyless and cutthroat, with kids just grinding for resumes instead of actually growing as people, which is important. And data shows that white teens take summer jobs at a rate of 50%, building real-world skills, earning money for themselves, versus just 20% for Asian students who just spend the summer cramming for tests or whatever. And, the mental health is a thing too, I guess. Suicide rates among elite Asian American cohorts are alarmingly high. Studies link them to parental pressure, fear of failure. Silicon Valley, this translates to engineers who are like, coding efficiently, I guess, but they lack the vision to invent. And so this like rote model wins admissions, but it loses eventually in the innovation war. Like, they're good again on paper, but in practice, maybe not so much. So, but the clash is not just personal. It's not just like sour grapes over Asians outperforming whites. It's standardized tests, which again, like the whole reason I have an issue with this is because the fact that like we're supposed to, oh, wow, look at them. They're being so successful. They are getting so many legs up that white Americans are not getting. And we're not even asking for the legs up. We're just asking for the boot to be taken off our neck. So it's like they want to have their cake and eat it too, where it's like they're getting all of these advantages and now they're outperforming us. And then they're just like, it's because you have sleepovers. Vivek Ramaswamy literally said that like in his famous Christmas crash out from 2 Christmases ago. So it's not just that, it's the standardized tests. It's the reshaping of American institutions, turning them into this like credential mill that is going to favor and select for the grinders, the strivers over like the true geniuses, right? And it's just like a total factory. And that mindset, the mindset of the ethnic striver does not end with the high school diploma or even the acceptance into the Ivy League university. It evolves into this like full-blown culture of performity and deception that infects professional life, especially in tech hubs like Silicon Valley. Like at its core, this is about chasing status through appearances, often at the expense of substance, integrity, anything that would actually afford to you that status, genuine contribution, like LinkedIn. Like we said, this is the striver's digital playground, right? You scroll through any feed which is dominated by Indian or Asian professionals, and that's all you're going to see. It's like endless parade of just like humble brags, grateful for the grind. You can sleep when you're dead. Here's me at my laptop at this place. Bet you didn't think I'd have my laptop at this place. Oh, yet I do. Yet I do. It's like they even have this like workforce confidence index, LinkedIn does, and it reveals that users from South and East Asia actually post at rates far higher than like white people do, with content that is more heavily skewed towards the specific like hustle culture like narrative. Like this is all just performative signaling. It is all just like a digital extension of that kind of resume padding that they start doing as soon as high school. And again, the goal is not actually inspiration, collaboration, productivity. It is just a personal branding to climb the ladder, often maybe masking burnout, actual incompetence, whatever. It's all a giant LARP. And this performativity, because again, it's so cutthroat, bleeds into just outright fraud and lying. Like ethnic strivers, particularly from India and China, are overrepresented in academic fraud, academic application scandals. Like the Department of Education actually did a study in 2024 on fraud in higher education, and it found exactly this, that international students from these countries account for nearly 2/3 of the detected cheating cases at top universities, from plagiarized essays to paying people to take tests for them. Operation Varsity Blues in 2019, they exposed the tip of the iceberg, but extensions and I guess you'd say subsequent years uncovered just like networks of fake transcripts, fake recommendation letters, all of this just being like funneled through the visa mills. It's just disgusting, dude. Like Indians alone make up 70% of H-1B recipients, and whistleblowers from firms like Infosys, Tata. Remember Tata from our H-1B video? Tata Consultancy Services. They describe credential factories, right? Where resumes are inflated and experience and social skills are all just like exaggerated to secure these spots. And some Indians have even been caught stealing resumes from qualified applicants or hiring lookalikes, literally, to do these video interviews for them, dude. You cannot imagine the corners that are being cut by these people. You've got College Board data from recent SAT reports showing anomalous score jumps in testing centers abroad, often linked to proxy test takers, right? Like this is gaming the system. This is eroding trust in institutions built on American honesty. You could not even comprehend it. And Silicon Valley is like the end game of the fraud, the whole factory, right? That is where the line goes to. It's like the H-1B visa program intended for specialized talent, right? That is how we were sold it 30 years ago. Now it's just a pipeline for ethnic strivers who prioritize, quantity over quality, lying over earning, artificial status over, a hard day's work, whatever you want to call it. So now companies like Google, Meta, they're hiring like waves of these kinds of engineers, not for innovation, but just for cheap labor that pads headcounts. Like that's all it is. And so the result is credential inflation. You've got PhDs from obscure universities that I'm supposed to take seriously, certifications bought online that I'm supposed to take seriously, an epic grind culture where you think it's like good that you're working 80 hours a week while producing absolutely nothing. It's like, I know guys that work 10 hours a week, and they're like, they're so high performing in those 10 hours that everybody's like, oh, you must be busy all the time. And they're like, no, I'm mostly just on Twitter. It's like, you are lying. You are doing all of this ritual, all of this LARPing to pretend that you are capable of achieving that level of output, because the output by itself could not actually speak alone. It couldn't stand on its own 2 feet. So this like whole performative hustle culture contributes to corporate bloat, where you've got more meetings than actual, I don't know, things being done. And whistleblower reports too reveal like these Indian-led teams at major firms faking, like literally just lying about project milestones to secure bonuses, echoing that the fraud in the first place that even got them in the door at these companies. And so, yeah, this is like profoundly un-American. This whole like striver ethos turns valley giants into bureaucracies. It takes any kind of like garage inventor spirit where you get your Apples or you get your Microsofts, and it turns it into just like setting everything up to take pictures of it so you can lie about it and then go back to doing what. So yeah, in the end, that's what it produces. It's just like fraud. It's a hollow elite class where you've got people who can achieve on paper, but they lack the actual ethics, creativity, balance, profundity, anything that would actually tend to define American success. Again, they're trying to hollow it out so they can fit into it, wear it as a skin suit. It rewards that. It selects for that. But normal Americans pay the price. The country suffers as a whole. American dreams are stepped on because of this striver phenomenon and the resultant erosion in trust which it causes. So, yeah, it starts at home, dude. And again, this is the clash of civilizations, right? Like, you've got these parenting styles that prioritize, achievement on paper above anything else. Amy Chua had a memoir, Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. Again, I guess that's what they're called. And that kind of became the manifesto for this approach. She was proudly detailing her methods with her daughters, Sophia and Lulu. No sleepovers, no play dates, no grades below A, mandatory violin, mandatory piano practice for hours every day, verbal shaming for any perceived failure. And she framed it as superior Chinese parenting versus soft Western indulgence, arguing that, kids in the West are fragile, and that leads to mediocrity. Why are you doing this in our country, if we're so mediocre? Wouldn't we be trying to do this in your country? I don't know. Like, you're going to ban TV, video games, computer, school plays, even insist instead, we have to participate in excellence. Demanding this kind of coercion until the child just like internalizes the drive. This is the like tiger mom model, right? And of course, this resonated in Asian immigrant communities, which again, these people, they tend to, it's a hive mind, right? It's like this similar kind of tactic, which maybe it's a Confucian thing, emphasizing this kind of like piety and academic success as like family honor. I don't know, dude. I think these people just tend to be collectivists, again, speaking very charitably. But the costs of this in terms of integrating it into the American social fabric are pretty devastating. Again, Patriot, Weriku's research reveals how this kind of like pressure cooker environment creates this like race at the top anxiety, with Asian teens reporting constant fear of disappointing parents. Suicide rates among Asian American youth are often like very high in these sort of like elite suburbs, maybe double the national average in some cases, linked, of course, directly to that economic stress, which obviously that's bad. But again, I'm more focused on how that's also affecting American students, right? And you've got research data showing, too, that Asian students actually experience higher rates of depression and isolation, with something like 40% reporting severe anxiety compared to like 25% for whites. So it's not helping anybody, apparently. Like, this relentless, like, just grind leaves no room for self-discovery. Like, kids are becoming proficient employees, whatever that means nowadays, but they don't have the well-roundedness. They don't have the creativity, the social bonds. And the own story, by the way, Chua's own story admits rebellion. She says, like, Lulu quit the violin practice because she was hating it. She's just installing resentment in her kids rather than some kind of like actual motivation, a legitimate striving for something greater. And so, yeah, this is just completely antithetical to the American ethos. The U.S. education ethos is rooted in individualism and holistic growth. It values kids actually exploring their passions through trial and error, building character, whether that's through failure, recovery, exploration. It's what summer camp was, dude. It's what team sports was, dude. Messing around in the garage, trying to build fireworks, right? This is where you get your Thomas Edisons, your Henry Fords. Whereas tiger parenting inverts this. It treats children as extensions of whatever the ambitions of the parents are. The parents have a chip on their shoulder because, like, I don't know, like Americans were doing really well and they weren't. They want to participate in the upper class of America. They want to do the LARP, and so they're trying to, like, live that out through their kids and put that pressure on their kids. Why don't you just chill out a little bit, right? I don't know. You're just like fostering conformity, which again, you know, is pretty natural to these kinds of cultures. Again, they're collectivist, but that explains why the strivers dominate, you know, whether it's like medicine or engineering, things like that, where it's very credentialed, very get your foot in the door, nepotistic, whereas entrepreneurial breakthroughs, things like that, which are a little bit tougher to, I don't know, maybe they're not so represented there. So, and researchers have noted this as well, like this kind of credentialism, how it contributes to corporate stagnation, where, you know, diverse hires prioritize, you know, the safe climb over the bold risk. And then Helen Andrews, again, she gets back to this. She says, white parents flee because they want kids to be happy humans, not stressed robots. That's the point. That is kind of what I'm getting to, you know. Europeans have a way we like to do things. Other parts of the world have ways that they like to do things. And we maybe have different definitions of flourishing, and maybe we just need to let everybody cook, I guess. I don't know. I think the Tiger Moms can do their thing. They can get their high achievers on paper, but the actual toll, what that actually creates in like generations, pretty ill-equipped for life's ambiguities, for the American way of life, the American dream in a proper understanding. You know, we tend to thrive on a more balanced rebel system, right? That's a good way to put it. Not so much this kind of like obedient ant-like grind so that we can present it in front of people and tell them that they should respect us. So yeah, it just clashes fundamentally with the whole American ethos of individualism, which is actually true because we're capable of that. Innovation, balanced success, whatever you want to call it. America was built on that kind of spirit, like pioneers who value risk-taking, creativity, self-reliance over this like conformity. Like, look what I did. Look at my, like the Wright brothers, you know? Messing around in a bicycle shop, Thomas Edison failing literally thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. It rewards bold thinkers, people who are determined, people who pursue passions beyond just credentials, beyond just like signaling to other people. Whereas striving, imported from, you know, these high pressure Asian cultures, just completely inverts that. It prioritizes grinding for the sake of it, you know, for status symbols, Ivy League degrees, credential, job, thing. It's like my LinkedIn profile. All it does is undermine trust. All it does is undermine meritocracy. And so, yeah, you can see this at any key institution, you know, whether it's the institution shifting from, again, the WASP dominance to Jewish dominance to now Asian dominance at these like top elite institutions. It's just like reflecting all of this, like organic merit, which is why the systems are valued in the first place, is now being completely undercut, and it's all fraudulent. And so it doesn't even like mean anything anyway. So the status that you're seeking literally is watered down, which is why those Big Ten schools, those SEC schools, those are actually being increasingly farmed, whereas Ivy League schools, maybe not so much. So that's the big problem. And that is why they are so quick to blame Americans for not looking so good on paper. They literally, what it is they just feel angry that they are excluded from what most people in the world recognize to be like a lot of fun, which is the American way of life, American civilization, the American dream. They even write about this dude. Like, I'm pretty sure Vivek Ramaswamy even like wrote in his book about how he was mad that like white girls wouldn't go out with him and just thought of him as like, you know, the brown kid. Mamdani in New York used to write about this too. Like, they are literally angry that American high school students can more or less dick around, have fun, do decently well in school, and then still get into pretty good colleges, go to tailgates, have fun, have a fun college experience, and then more or less stumble their way into success, because it turns out that American society works very well when American people are able to just kind of like do their thing. And they see that and they're angry because they can't compete with that. And so they have to cheat, they have to lie, they have to cut corners, they have to allow for the sort of like literally government mandated suppressing of American excellence, which allows and creates these vacuums, which they can then come in and fill. So then they can be like, well, see, I earned this because I worked harder. Where were you bringing the laptop to the restaurant? You were at the sleepover. You were watching Boy Meets World. It's all just resentment, which is, again, why in those first tweets I saw, you can see the resentment, because if this guy actually believed these things, his response to somebody saying, I don't know, man, I think the Big Ten schools are doing pretty good, wouldn't be to say, oh yeah, well, this white kid fucking died. Ha ha, guess not. Guess you shouldn't be partying. Guess you should have been practicing piano. Should have been playing a little bit more Claire de Lune, a little bit less beer pong. Fuck you. You are lying. You suck. You're not that guy. Your credentials mean nothing. You suck. I don't like you. So yeah, no more ethnic strivers. I've had my fill. I'm done. I'm saying no more. You're welcome. I officially solved the problem. You will not have to worry about this any longer. Because we're going to save America. And speaking of saving America, I have to tell you about the importance of the SAVE Act, the Save America Act, meant to, you know, safeguard American voter eligibility, SAVE. They're very crafty with these things over in Congress. Say what you will. But essentially, yeah, this is a bill aimed at strengthening voter security by requiring proof of citizenship when one goes to register to vote nationwide. It's also going to require consistent voter roll maintenance, criminal penalties for election fraud. This is obviously all very important. You know, we mentioned this in our kind of, I think we called it Project 2035, sort of like what has to happen in the next 10 years to make sure that patriots don't get put back in the box. The Leviathan that is the global left cannot mobilize an effective counterattack against patriots. So we mentioned it in terms of pillars, right, that are maintaining this whole system, things we need to attack. One of those is obviously elections. Immigration, and, you know, people say there's no political... Oh, what, you think you're going to vote your way out of this? As we said, dude, voting is how this works. Democrats import illegal aliens because they vote. They ballot harvest because of votes. Votes are actually like our path here. And so if you want to like work within that, you do have to have mass deportations and a secure border so that you are stopping the importation of these third world voters who are going to vote for Democrats. Okay, so that's part of it, right? Obviously. Another part of it is elections. It's not enough to say, okay, we're going to take dead voters off the rolls. We're going to get illegal aliens out of here. Also, there are people in America who are voting illegally who should not be voting. That is a problem, right? They're already here. So you need to have secure elections because it turns out when you require elections to be secure, Democrats actually don't perform so well. Good enough for me because it's good enough for them, right? We're playing the game of politics. Everybody knows how this is supposed to work. So this is one of those things, right? It's not just immigration, which I do believe is the most important issue. Another one of those pillars that we articulated was the need for free and fair elections, which is to say actual elections that are legitimate, that take themselves seriously like they do in literally every other country, requiring an ID, just as you need an ID to do like literally everything else. So this bill was introduced originally back in the Big 2-4, and it was passed in the House. Wait, what the did I just say? Disgusting. Run it back. So this was originally introduced all the way back in 2024. It passed in the House, stalled in the Senate, and now another version was introduced in January 2025 by Chip Roy. So this passed in the House in April. Still, though, it has not made progress in the Senate. And so Senate Leader John Thune claims to be making improvements to the bill, requiring photo ID to vote nationwide, whatever. Progress is still stalled. So the Senate may be required to nuke the filibuster rule in order to get this passed. That would be like epic, because there's no chance that any Democrat is going to support something that makes it harder for Democrats to take and maintain power. So, yeah, this is an extremely important thing that needs to get passed. This is like again, we articulated this very clearly. Here it is. We don't want illegals to vote. We need voter ID. Voter ID is popular democratically. We love democracy. 80% support nationwide, even among minority groups, because they think like, why would I want someone without an ID to vote? Because they assume that's like, evil, stupid people. Whoever, there is no reason to not get this bill through, no matter the cost. This bill is literally the most important thing that I've ever heard about in my life. Failing to get this bill passed would be the end of Republican control of the legislature permanently and forever. There is no way back from this if we do not get this bill passed literally right now. So yeah, go bombard Senator John Thune's office with phone calls, with emails, with whatever. Demand that he get this bill passed. Dude, what are you doing? Call this guy. We're going to literally put his information on the screen because all of you live in his state, obviously, and we are encouraging democratic participation in the democratic participant process. So go call this guy, ask him what he's doing, tell him to get his hand out of his pants and freaking like make it illegal for bad people to vote in our elections, because otherwise we're all going to die. All right, BRB. Thank you. Go do that literally right now. What are you... Please, literally, please. Again, this is the most important thing that I've ever heard about in my life. Go do it. Call the number, write the email. It's the easiest thing ever. I give you permission, you little striver, to use ChatGPT to write the email. Copy, paste. It'll take 10. I have been bitching about this longer than it would take you to actually do what I am bitching at you to do. So I will stop. Do your part. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back on the program. We're going to be back for the big episode Friday. I'm very excited about it. They are calling it the Big 2-6, episode 26. I can't even begin to tell you what we have planned. Even I can't even conceive of it yet. It's like a sort of Lovecraftian character. I'm staring into it, but I don't quite know what it means yet. It's actually driving me insane. I might kill myself. Who knows? We've got a lot planned for the episode. You're definitely going to want to see it. Again, the Big 2-6 happening Friday. There will be a Q&A. There might even be a party clown. Maybe we'll do some street magic. Who even knows what's going to happen? Again, it's the Big 2-6. Nobody could possibly conceive of what we have planned for this. It would drive you literally insane. So in the meantime, go to Apple, go to Spotify, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think of the show. We will see you back here on Friday for the Big 2-6 episode, which everybody wants to see, obviously. So thank you so much for watching. God bless you. God bless America. And yeah, Big 2-6. Don't miss it. Okay, see you then. Bye.